Baby chicks can be a whole lot of fun. And if you're watching this, you might be planning on, thinking about, or maybe even already purchased your baby chicks and you're wondering, what the heck do I do with them when I get them home? Before we get started, there's a whole lot of materials that you need to be ready and set up for your baby chicks. If you don't know what those materials are, we did a video a few weeks back about all the materials you need to be set up for them. If you haven't watched that video yet and you don't know what you need, you can go over and watch that video. I'll put a link for it in the description below. I will put a list of all the materials you're gonna need to be set up for your chicks, and that'll be in the description below as well. Before you get your chicks and actually bring them home, you wanna make sure that you have your brooder completely set up and ready to go. You wanna make sure that your heat source is on and that your brooder is up to temp. You don't wanna get your chicks home and then scramble to get everything ready. So for us, we use this tote here. We also have a video on how we set this tote up. This is like a big, I think it's called an IBC tote. I'm not exactly sure. But we took this tote and we cut a door in it and all sorts of stuff to turn it into a brooder for us. And it's worked really well. But you don't have to go all out and get a big crazy brooder like this. Something as simple as a tote is gonna work just fine as long as you have a lid, because after a week or so, those birds are gonna try to jump out and they're like little jumping beans. They're all over the place. So whatever it is that you're gonna use, make sure you have it set up and ready to go before you bring your chicks home. Oh, it's about to get loud. You ready? It's the sound of freedom. America! If you've watched my videos before, you might have heard those noises before. And they're actually F-35s from the Air Force Base. And we get them just flying right over our house. And those ones were low and they were coming just completely sideways. That was cool. Here at our house, we don't use heat lamps anymore. What we use is radiant heat panels. They're made specifically for chicks. They can kind of dart in and out of that little brooder heater thing, and it just makes them feel really safe. It gives them somewhere to hide, gives them somewhere to be warm. Now, a lot of people do use heat lamps, and in this situation, it's okay to use them. It's a little bit more on the dangerous side compared to a brooder heater. But people do use heat lamps and they use them successfully. The biggest thing you gotta remember is that those heat lamps produce a lot of electricity and heat, and it can lead to a fire. Just make sure you're taking the proper precautions and securing it. Make sure it can't fall onto your bedding, anything like that. Just make sure that you are being safe with your heat lamp if you're using a heat lamp instead of a brooder heater. Now, when you first get your chicks home, that first week, you wanna have them at about 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So to us, that's pretty hot, but for a bird, that's not. An adult bird, their body temperature is actually 105 to 107 degrees. And so 95 degrees really isn't all that hot for these guys. So you wanna make sure that you have your hot area around 95 degrees. And then what you can do is every single week after that, you can drop it by about 5 degrees. And if you're kind of unsure on what the temperature is, where your heat lamp or your brooder heater is, there's ways of kind of, without a thermometer, seeing if you're at your right temperature. What you need to do is watch your chicks. What's gonna happen is if your heat lamp is too high or your brooder heater is not hot enough, you're gonna find all of your chicks kind of huddled up right underneath that lamp. They're gonna be trying to get as much heat as possible because it's not warm enough for them. On the flip side to that, if you notice that all your chicks are kind of avoiding that heat lamp and they're kind of on the outskirts of your brooder, that might be telling you that you're too hot underneath that heat lamp or underneath that brooder heater. So you might want to back off a little bit and lower that temperature a little bit. What you want to be seeing is you want to be seeing the birds moving around freely throughout your brooder. You don't want to see them all away from the heater or all underneath the heater. What they should be doing is moving in and out of that heat freely and kind of regulating their body temperature that way. After the 6th week, your birds are going to be feathered out and you can start to pull that heat away from them. The next thing you're going to want to do is make sure you get that food set up for them. And what you're going to want to feed them is a medicated chick starter grower. For hens that are going to be egg laying, you want to give them about a 20% protein medicated starter grower. If you're raising meat birds, you want to up that to about 24% to give them that extra size. And you want to make sure that the food you're giving them is the medicated food. And what the medicated food is going to do is it's going to help prevent coccidiosis. I'm never gonna get that word right. It's gonna help prevent that, so that way they don't get sick and nothing happens to them there. The feeders are gonna come in all different shapes and sizes, and there's not really a right and wrong way of doing it. A lot of people are gonna be starting out with the really small feeders. Us, we kind of have one that's a little bit too big here, but it's working just fine. This year we don't have nearly as many chicks, so we didn't wanna go buy a new one. But that feeder works just fine for us. And you're also going to want to make sure that they have their water. And not just normal water. I'm going to show you what we do to kind of help them get set up when they're really young. So if you can tell, I don't know if you can tell in this light, but this water is a little bit orange, right? Let me get this close so they don't come running out on me. Well, the water that we give them when they very first come to us, I mean, they just got done with the big journey, right? Most of these birds, they're being shipped all over the country, all over the place. They're put through a lot of stress. They're put through temperature fluctuations, and really these birds just, they need a pick-me-up. Well, the pick-me-up we use are just these electrolytes, and you can pretty much get them anywhere. And these electrolytes, one package of these mixes into 1 gallon of water, and you mix this in, and it's gonna give them the extra things that they need to kind of get them back on track after the long journey they just went on. So for us, we do this probably twice. We put, so a total of about 2 gallons, depending on how many birds we have. We just make sure we get them back on track. And really what we wanna do is just reduce the amount of stress that these birds have. A stressed bird can have complications like pasty butt. Pasty butt, we're gonna do a full video on next week, so keep an eye out for that one. But pasty butt is something that stressed birds get, and if it's not taken care of, it can actually be fatal to them. So these electrolytes are just one more step to kind of help with that. You want to make sure that the water you're giving them is always clean. It does help to kind of move your water up above your bedding. So maybe put a board on top of your bedding and then put your water on top of that board so your birds aren't tracking all of that bedding into the water. You want to make sure it stays clean 100% of the time. And if you can't keep it clean, you want to make sure that you're getting in there and cleaning it multiple times a day. Now, when you first get your birds, it's not a terrible idea to help them find the water because they don't just know where the water is. So maybe take your bird as you're putting it into the brooder and dip its little beak. I know this is gonna feel really weird, but dip its little beak into the water. It's gonna taste that water, realize where it came from, and then it's gonna go back to that water and understand where it's at. This is one of those steps where maybe it's just kind of going kind of the extra mile a little bit, because yeah, they would probably eventually find that water anyways, but help them out. Just kind of dip their beak in there, help them find that water. Once 1 or 2 birds realizes where that water is, the rest of them are gonna follow. Another issue you can run into in the first couple of days there is your birds can actually drown in your water dish. So one thing you can do to actually help with this is you can put little pebbles in your water dish, and this is gonna make it so if they do kind of go head first into their water dish, they're not gonna fall all the way in and drown. They can kind of drink and still get that water around those pebbles, but it's gonna make that water really, really shallow. And you just do it the first few days, so that way they don't drown in their water dish. It's not gonna happen often, but it can happen. It's never happened to us, thankfully. Might be overkill, but that's fine. And then another thing with your water is you don't wanna place your water directly under your heat. So if you do have a heat lamp, don't put your water under that heat, because do you like hot water, drinking hot water? Probably not, I don't either. Put the water away from your heat source. And then depending on your brooder setup, after the first few days, when those chicks kind of get used to everything and know where everything's at, another thing you can do to help keep your water clean is a lot of the waters have little handles on them like this one here. So you can take that handle and actually hang it up to where it's just kind of hanging about 1 inch above your bedding. And that's gonna go a really long way in helping you keep your water clean. Hey, real quick, do me a huge favor, go down and hit the like button. It's gonna help this video spread to a whole lot more people, and I've got a cougar to feed. All right, next let's talk about the bedding. For the first few days, it's not uncommon for people to use paper towels as bedding. It's gonna kind of help keep the birds from ingesting any of that bedding as they're kind of getting used to being birds. So what a lot of people do is they take paper towels and lay them along the bottom, and then anytime they get wet, soiled, dirty, anything like that, you can just replace those paper towels. This is a really easy way to keep your brooder really clean, especially in those first few days when your chicks are just kind of stumbling around all over the place trying to figure out life. But then after that, after a few days, what we do is we use pine shavings. Let me go get ours. All right, so here's the stuff that we use. And these are pine flakes, I think technically is what it is. And we really like these flakes because they're, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this very well, but they're really big and flaky, like flakes. And that kind of helps us in multiple ways. It helps keep the dust down, because when you get the really fine shavings, there's a whole lot of dust in those bags. And then that every time you get in your brooder, it's just gonna be all over the place. Another problem you can run into is if your shavings are really small, your birds can accidentally digest that, and you don't want that, that's bad. So with these bigger flakes, they can't digest it, there's less dust all over the place. I really like these shavings. They've been the best by far of any kind of bedding we've used as far as the brooder goes. We love this stuff. And what's really awesome about this stuff is you can kind of do the deep litter method inside of your brooder. What you do is you just put a thin layer of those flakes down in the first place, and then as the birds soil that, you just put another layer down and another layer down, and you just layer it. You do the bedding, and then they soil it, and then you do another layer of bedding and another. And as long as you're adding enough flakes to that, enough bedding to the brooder as they're soiling it, you're never gonna have any smell, anything gross, anything like that. And then as your birds move out of the brooder and into the coop, you can take all that bedding and put it into your garden. The only thing you really need to watch out for is if the birds play in their water and make it really wet in there, you do want to pull that stuff out. Don't leave really wet bedding in there. You want to make sure you're keeping it really, really dry in your brooder. Now, all these birds really need to thrive is food, water, and heat, which we've already talked about. They need to stay dry, which we kind of touched on, and draft free. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but we've got holes drilled all over the top of ours. So we have some good airflow through the top, but we don't have any holes drilled down at the level that the birds are because we don't want a draft moving through our brooder. And as long as you have all those things figured out, your birds are going to thrive. I will say that having chicks, you will have some that die sometimes. And for us, it finally happened this year, was the first time it's ever happened to us. And it was honestly pretty sad. It wasn't just our chicks. We had the neighbors' chicks in here. We had our friends' chicks in. We were kind of doing all of our friend group, everybody's chicks were in here. And we ended up having a lot of them die. We pretty much got a whole batch from somewhere I'm not gonna name, and all of them died. And we've never had chicks die before. So we did exactly what you should do if you ever have chicks die, is we went through and we checked all of our temperatures, we checked our bedding, we checked our water, we checked everything to make sure that we had everything done correctly. And then we went out and we got some more chicks. We moved forward and kept on keeping on, kept it on. We moved on, and it was sad, but we had to move on. We made sure we were doing everything right. We got some more chicks, and now these chicks are doing great. We have no issues with them. They're running around, hopping all over the place. Another thing I want to touch on is if you've never had chickens before, and you've heard all these crazy things about salmonella and how they carry salmonella, all these crazy bad stories, just practice general hygiene. Every time you work with your birds, go in, wash your hands with soap and water. General hygiene, make sure you're washing up after yourself, and salmonella is never gonna be an issue for you. If you have any cats, dogs, birds, anything that might want to get to your baby chicks, make sure that they are kept away from your birds, so that way they can't get to them. I know that's something that should be common sense, but maybe you do have these pets and you trust them. Maybe don't trust them unsupervised. These chicks are extremely fragile, and even just a little bump or drop or kind of a nudge too far, that it can kill them. So make sure you're keeping them safe, keeping them protected, and doing everything we talked about here today. And then what you can do is you can go watch this video right here. And this video is either gonna be something that YouTube thinks you like, or depending on when you watch this, it's gonna be the next video in the series. So either way, go watch this video right now, and I'll see you there.